Okay, here we are. Welcome, Barbara from Luadash, back again.
Thank you again. Hello.
Let's have some tea and have a conversation.
Yeah, I didn't prepare questions.
Great.
I just
Okay, great. All
said
right, let's
those
just talk
questions. But
about stuff.
yeah, I would like to continue what we started on the last class
Okay.
about animals and consciousness.
Okay.
Animals. The question I would like to really put would be: are animals already enlightened? I've been thinking a lot about this.
Yeah, what do you think?
I think yes, but yeah, I think yes.
What does that mean?
Don't start with us
I'm
going
curious.
around the
I'm curious.
subject. No, you should.
What does that
The
mean to you?
question is, you're. I'm putting the questions. You're answering them.
Oh, I'm answering. Oh, okay,
Yeah,
got
yeah,
it. All right.
exactly. Remember that.
Okay, got it. So then what is the question again? Can you re
Are animals
ask?
already enlightened, and they maybe not aware of that fact, but do they actually need to be aware of that?
Well, here's what I would say. First of all, enlightenment is a human concept. And so it applies to humans historically. And I've never heard it really applied to animals. I don't think animals are the way humans are. And I don't really know for sure, but it appears that they don't have self reflection like we humans have. They don't have that ability. However, it also appears that they don't have the problems that humans have, with all the
That's true.
suffering, especially with regard to all the thoughts, you know.
Mhm.
So I think that probably animals work through instinct and act freely in that way. So they're not imprisoned by their thinking mind the way that humans are imprisoned by their thoughts and their emotions. And so in that respect, you could say they're free, they're free to be themselves, and
They
it
are
doesn't
just being
they're just being
themselves.
themselves.
They're just being what they are
Yeah.
supposed to be. And even that idea
Yeah.
of instinct, why not intuition? Because that's also a human made word applied to humans.
It-
Why not to animals also? Because we also have instinct and we also have intuition. How come we are
yeah.
so sure that they don't have also
Yeah.
intuition? And
Honestly, I don't know because
yeah,
I haven't been an animal in this
in
lifetime.
this life. Well, you are.
Except for the human animal. So, but honestly, I don't really know what that all that means,
Mhm.
And my sense is that animals are just themselves, but they don't suffer the way humans suffer, because humans mostly suffer because of the thinking mind, because they live in fear, this basic fear of death, and because they're
Is
identified with their emotions and thoughts, right, in the
And
body.
isn't that the main thing that stops a human from being aware of who they really are in their essence? Isn't it the mind and the
The thing,
working around the mind and the thinking and the identifying with this or with that and with the emotions? Isn't that what stops us from um, really seeing who we are?
yeah,
Okay. So if they
absolutely,
don't have that and they're also animals, mammals,
right.
it's I don't know, it makes sense to me that some years ago there was a lot of, I mean, I can still see if I research a little bit that there's still a lot of debate around this. But now it's more accepted that we don't know as much as we think we do about animals because they don't speak the same language. We don't understand where they are, what they are doing in their minds. I mean, it's even hard sometimes to know this with a human that is close to us. But now it's more being more accepted that they have everything that we have. They have the same level of pain. I mean, whatever that means, the same level. But they suffer, but they also contemplate. They also try to help. They also feel empathy. Even on morals or ethics, we might say, and it can be observed that animals have that. And people talk a lot about the mirror experiment, which is very famous. I don't know if you know that if you put an animal, one of the main reasons why people were deciding that animals are not aware of themselves is because in this experiment they would put an animal with a mark on their face in front of a mirror, and most animals, they would not look in the mirror trying to see what is that mark in their own body.
Right, right.
But then actually, and a lot of papers were written about this, and a lot of books and all that, and certainties were solidified in this with this perspective. But more and more scientists are actually seeing that that is not true, that there are animals that actually do recognize themselves in the mirror. Maybe the big, like dolphins and elephants, and I can't remember now which are the other, some type of birds, that they actually saw this happening, and they so it's like changing a lot of this perspective, and how our way of getting information about what we are observing, it's very dubious and very weak, because it's only our human way to look at things. It seems that the conclusions we've been taking and that we take for granted keep on changing, and they will keep on changing. And I'm thinking about a book I read many years ago, which is called When Elephants Weep. I don't know if you saw this. So, if you ever read. So, it basically divides the chapters in emotions and observations from scientists all over the world, and anthropologists and biologists that tell stories, and they share stories about how they see something happen with that animal, and they link that with the emotion that this chapter is talking about. And all of the ones that we feel, all of the emotions that are considered human, they do. It is observed by many scientists in the same way. And so what is lacking for us to, accept? I mean, they probably don't think so much as we do, but that's probably a good thing.
Yeah, yeah.
they
Right.
they do contemplate. They live in nature. They live in balance. They very hardly ever get it. I mean, normally the imbalance that happens is immediately stopped, or was created by us. This is the reality. They seem to have a very good awareness about what surrounds them and what is their role in it, and they seem to be really fine with it. And but we still continue with this division of, but this is more animal feelings, and this is more the higher self kind of feelings, and this is where I would like to go with the word enlightenment. Is why this division about, because what we see, it's only what we see, and it fails. It's only a human perspective.
Yeah.
And my intuition really says that animals are actually, they're actually there. They're actually there in this place, and they don't need they probably would laugh about all our considerations about what it's going on in their consciousness or not, because they don't need it. They don't strive for it, because we don't see them striving for it, or try, or we cannot even prove that, because probably they don't even need that. They're fine where they are. They seem to accept this as something that has to happen eventually. But they still weep their closest people. They still feel love. They still create relationships and attachment and all that, but in a more balanced way.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know if they're more balanced or not.
Mhm.
Um, but like I said, I don't see them suffering because they're angry or they're sad or depressed or having any kind of.
Well, there are examples of depression in animals, yes,
Sure.
especially relating to the conditions they are in. There
Right,
are.
but they don't suffer the way humans do in that respect. I think their emotions are very instinctual, and human emotions can also be instinctual, fight or flight, but there's a lot of other emotions that humans have that are formed out of just because they're stuck in their thinking mind.
Mhm.
And so there's a lot of just stuckness with humans where they're because they're identified with their conditioning, basically. And I don't really see that with animals. I think animals are just conditioned the way they are through natural processes, but I don't see them. I mean, yeah, who's to say,
Yeah,
really?
that's
Who's to
it.
say?
That's all
I don't really
that
know.
I feel in the end is who's to say,
Yeah.
because that's the thing, we're only humans. I was also curious to ask you, because I remember when I met you, you were doing this course with Laura Williams, weren't you? With Laura Williams about animal
Oh,
communication and
yes, I
everything.
was right. Yeah.
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 So
So
I was curious, in
yeah,
if you, I don't know how much you dived into that
yeah, I did.
subject. I would like to know a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So I tried it with the javeli here, with the wild boar, and it was really quite fascinating. I seemed to connect with them, and I made an agreement with them to not come up to this terrace of my land and dig up my trees. And in exchange, I would give them my compost. And so I tried that for a while. They didn't eat my compost though; they just ate all of my black walnuts. I
So
came
you
out.
you went
I came out one
negotiating
day.
with the Indians. Well done.
I came out one day and there's no black walnuts like anywhere.
Hmm.
They're completely gone.
The ones
And the
in the
year
floor, you
before,
mean? The ones in the floor.
yeah, the
Oh,
ones
okay.
on the ground.
Hmm.
And the year before, there were like, there were like 500 of them, and I
Yeah.
harvested them. And of course, I was a little late in harvesting, but I expected them to still be there when December
Yeah.
rolled in, and they were completely gone. But they didn't come up and dig up to the terrace out here and
That's
dig up
really
my
cool.
trees.
And how did you do the communication with them? Did you go outside? You sat? Did you
No, no,
ask
I
them?
just I didn't even need to go outside. I
Okay.
just I just went into a meditation of visualizing them and visualizing connecting with them and asking them questions and getting to know them through this visualization process. And they were very friendly and not dramatic at all. Like they were just like, "Oh, what's up?"
No,
You know,
drama is our thing.
"What's up, dude?" Like, "Okay, we're here. We
Yeah.
eat, we sleep."
We were
You
here
know,
before you came, by the way.
we were here long before you came, you silly expat. Yeah, so yeah, it was really interesting. And then I told them my issue, and then I wondered if they could, if we could come to some kind of agreement about, because I'm using this land now, and there are things I'd like to see be a certain way. And they have all the lower part of the land, which is over half of the
Okay.
land that we own. And I know this is part of their travel route through this area too.
Mm.
So, because I see the pathways that they walk on. So yeah, so I did that, and they didn't come up again, and I didn't see any digging
Wow.
in the land there where I told
Okay.
them that I wanted them to stay away from. So
Mm. Were you meditating when you were communicating with them? Was that was or in some sort of
yeah, I was
state
in a
of
like a
mentally?
probably in like a deeper state of,
Okay.
yeah, of
Mm.
some kind of meditation. So it was very single pointed,
Mhm.
and yeah, it was very intentional, and with having my mind calm, and just it was all very clear,
Mhm.
and I could see them perfectly in this vision,
Yeah.
like I could see what they look like in their environment, where they slept and where they ate. It seemed oddly natural, and
The communication, you mean, the
yeah,
act of
yeah,
communicating. Yeah.
yeah. It seemed
Mm.
like, oh, like I could have been doing this all along,
Yeah.
I had never even thought of it before.
Yeah, I only realized this possibility, in the the last couple of years that I got in touch with that. And I never actually did it intentionally, communicating with them, but I did it the same way in
Yeah,
a explosion of emotional doom
yeah.
because I went outside and I saw 35 of my fruit trees completely
Oh my
broken, and in the phase where the fruit was there, and I could see and I could imagine myself in a couple of months eating that, and everything destroyed. And I just started crying. I just literally there in the terrace, I just got on my knees and I started crying. And I called them names, which I regret now, but I was really not nice. But in the end, I was just like, please stop with this. I really need these trees. It's like the second time I'm planting all these trees, and if it's not the fire, now it's the wild boar. This has to stop, and I was just putting all my thoughts there. And I don't know, it didn't happen again. To
Yeah.
the trees, they are still around. I still see them going everywhere.
Why do you
My
think
do-
they stopped?
I don't know. Well,
Huh.
I just thought maybe. I like to stay in maybes.
Yeah.
a lot. I'm okay with that,
Yeah.
and maybe they heard. Maybe they, although I was not being very nice to them, maybe
Right.
they just decide, okay, let's leave that one alone for a while. Let's go to Wendy then. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
It's something that has been a lot on my mind, especially because of that, the conversation that we started in the class uh, about this thing. But
Yeah.
also the word enlightenment. Yes, you do ask me, what is that? Yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
what is that? But let's just agree on something so we don't have to be always asking
You
each
want to
other what.
define
Yeah,
enlightenment.
yes,
So
yes.
enlightenment,
How would you define that?
well,
It makes
according
it easy.
to enlightenment is a Buddhist term,
Mm,
and according to the traditions of Buddhism, enlightenment is complete freedom from suffering for a human. So it's going beyond the identification with the body mind completely, where you're no longer subject to any kind of suffering whatsoever. It's not a state. It's an evolution of consciousness where you've completely stopped identifying with the body mind,
mm.
and so you can still
So you stop
experience a body.
exactly, and you still
You can
experience the
steer. You
suffering,
can.
but you
Well,
don't
it's not
identify with it.
suffering. You're not identified with the
Okay,
suffering, so it's not suffering to you
okay.
because you're
It's
not
it's just
suffering.
emotions then.
There's no one to suffer. There's no one
Mm,
there to suffer because the small I, the me, goes away, and there's just beingness. So there's no personal anything. It's not personal. You
mhm.
can experience things through the body mind that are, I guess you could say personal, but because you're not identified with that,
You
it's
just
not
watch
personal
it,
at all. It's not
observe it.
personal. Yeah, you're just
Mhm.
observing it. So apparently, the body mind continues to go the way that it has been going for whatever reason. It continues on until it goes away. But we don't experience it the way most people do. If we're enlightened, we experience it as just phenomena, like
Mm.
any other phenomena.
Okay.
So
So let me just get this right. So because I've been sometimes I just listen to a podcast or something and it's people talking about what is to be enlightened for them. Okay. But a lot of what they say goes to the same point, which is you still suffer, or you still feel the emotions, you still observe the situations that upset you because you're still in a body. You're still in a body in
you're
this
not in a
planet.
body.
You're not in a body when you're
No,
enlightened.
no.
Okay, so
Uh,
how
uh,
does that work then?
well, you never were in a body. You're not in a body now. You're experiencing
Through the body,
a body.
a
You're
body. Yeah,
having an
that's
experience of a body. They say, a lot of times they say, you're not in the world is in you. So you are projecting a body as well. You're projecting everything else. So it's like a dream. So in the same way as in a dream, you have a body, right? You're experiencing a dream body
mhm.
and a dream environment. So it's the same way. It's not real. It's a projection of the mind. And enlightenment is the constant seeing of that you are in a dream, you're experiencing the dream. But like when you are having what do you call it? When you're dreaming, but you're awake, a lucid dream. So
Yeah.
it's like having a lucid dream. You're aware that you're dreaming, but you still have that experience of the dream, right? But you're just aware that it's a dream or it's a hologram,
Okay.
it's just a projection of the mind. So yeah, so
Mm.
you're not in a body and you never
Mhm.
were in a body.
Even before enlightenment, you were never in the body. Yeah.
No.
So what happens? But you're still projecting that body because one of the conversations I had with you is that it continues. Like even after enlightenment, you continue chopping wood, cooking, and
Yeah.
doing the basic things to support that body,
Yes.
right? So
Right.
you still have this.
Except it's not you, it's just the body.
Yeah.
So what you call you, it no longer exists as the personality. The personality
Hmm.
no longer
Okay.
exists because the personality is the identification with the body. So since there's no longer any identification left, you see the body and you see every other body
So it's by
as a
with like,
body, as
so
like
my body
phenomena.
wants to have food now.
Yeah.
Is that how you just
The body
experience it?
just the body
Oh,
just
my body,
continues
I chopped
continues
my
on.
finger. My body is in pain.
It's no longer my, me
This
or
body.
mine.
No.
There's just a body and there's other bodies.
Mm,
So you can't think of it in terms
mm,
of conventional thinking. You need to completely leave that. Once you get a taste of it, you'll understand that it's completely impersonal and there's just beingness. So, and you have a visual or an experience of complete wakefulness. You're completely awake. And there's all this change happening because change is the only constant, as they say,
mm.
except for this isness, which is complete peace. So what you call you then at that point
Okay.
doesn't exist anymore. It's just isness. It's
Okay.
just what is. And so there's no longer a point of view. Although if you want, you can go back down and
To
start to
experience.
identify more with the body and have a more of a body
Mhm.
experience. But the body changes as well. So it's like they call it the four bodies of a Buddha. So there's different aspects of these bodies. And one of them, so the different aspects that you're experiencing are like emptiness and bliss and omniscience and complete and
Mhm.
utter compassion and love. So you're having these experiences, but underneath all of that is just this constant peace. It's this constant beingness, which is what you are. So, or you could say it's just awareness, or it's just consciousness.
But you still use the body to communicate. You still use the body to be with other
Well,
people.
since
I
it's
mean, if you are a
impersonal,
if you
see
are a
again, you have
parent,
to.
if you're you have relationships, you still have them, and that's where I was gonna go. Like, what is the point of relationships then? Or first, why would someone actually decide to go and experience anything in the body after enlightenment?
These are all really good questions. So I can give you an example of like
Hmm.
when Nisargadatta Maharaj became fully awakened, he kept smoking. He was a biddy salesman. He smoked these
Hmm.
little Indian cigarettes, and he just kept smoking. And then one of his students asked him, "If you're enlightened, why are you still smoking? Why do you still need to smoke?" And he said simply that the body wants to smoke, so I just let it smoke.
The
It's
body
kind
wants
of
to
like
smoke. Okay.
that. It's kind of like that. The body just
Hmm.
continues
Yeah.
on the way it's been going.
Yeah.
There's a continuation there
Okay.
until it goes away. So because things arise and pass away constantly, all phenomena are doing that because, like I said, change is the only constant. So within the
So
physical
that's
realm.
it. The body wants to smoke, it smokes. The body wants
Yeah.
to eat, it eats.
Yeah.
Wants to drink,
Yeah.
wants to have sex with
Yeah.
someone. Does this actually happen, or is it something considered more like
Does what happen?
the sexual attraction, for example, from someone that is you never read about it?
No, I have. I have.
Yeah,
Mm.
because no, I mean I say sex because it's normally considered as something more primal, animal.
Yeah.
Like we accept the food need, the rest need, the
Yeah.
drinking water need, but when it comes to sex or sexual attraction, we put this. We normally humans, we have this in many cultures, this attitude of but that's like animalistic stuff, which
Yeah.
and I just wonder,
Yeah.
did you ever wonder? Does someone enlightened can maintain an intimate relationship with someone? Because I imagine a husband that, you know,
Yeah. I think it's the same as what we talked about
a
with the
wife.
smoking. If the
Hmm.
body wants to have sex, then the body has sex. And then
And it's
if it,
only an
yeah,
experience
but
observed with curiosity.
it's not you though. It's no
Yeah.
longer, there's no longer a me. So,
Yeah.
if the continuation of whatever was happening with the body wants to continue or do something else as part of the blueprint of this body mind that has had a beginning and a middle and an end, was born and dies as every body does. If that experience wants to happen, then it happens. So there are lots of, historically, there are enlightened beings that had sex with their students, apparently, according to the stories. And there are ones that
Or with
didn't at
someone
all.
else.
Didn't at all. They didn't have sex, or they had very private personal lives where you didn't know what was
So
happening.
normally a person would doubt that this person is enlightened. Do you see what I mean?
I
But
understand.
but in your view, is it that the case or is it not? Is it just that they
Is it
just
what the case?
allowed the body to experiment that?
So it's an interesting question. There are levels of awakening.
Hmm.
So enlightenment is, the definition of enlightenment is the full awakening of, so the full realization of the self. And so you can be partially awakened or enlightened. You can have had very deep experiences and become a very renowned teacher and still not be completely enlightened. And then within that, there's something that Ken Wilber talked about, which is growing up and growing in wisdom. These are two separate things. So one has to do with the body mind in the earthly realm, in the human realm, and that is growing up. So we mature as humans, or to a greater or lesser degree. So that includes every kind of human aspiration or human tendency toward growth or
Hmm.
not. So a lot of these gurus that had they had sexual relations with their students, or they had some kind of a scandal or something. What Ken Wilber would say is they didn't grow up, but they grew in wisdom. So their wisdom had far surpassed their ability to act like a mature human. So they didn't
Hmm.
really grow up, but they grew in wisdom, or they were already that way before they were born, and they came in to experience a body and learn in that regard what it was like to have that experience of a body. So there's many variations of what it could be, and I don't think, I can't really generalize about what is what. But what I can say is there is something to what Ken Wilber said about, these enlightened beings that just act like really immature, and are doing all kinds of crazy things, But then there's also this
Was Ken Will?
enlightened aspect of crazy wisdom. There's crazy wisdom, which is, as you probably know, if you read my book, I talk about it in there, where it's ignoring all conventions,
Hmm.
completely
Yeah.
ignoring all conventions, because you don't need to play by those rules anymore. You don't
That
need to play by
that's why
the
I was gonna
conventional
ask if
rules.
Ken Wilber is enlightened.
I have no
He's an
idea.
enlightened being.
I have no idea.
Okay.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
But he's a smart guy.
All right.
But
There's
yeah,
many.
so yeah. So there's interest, I don't really think there is an answer to all these questions.
Yeah, I know.
It's all just a continuation of question marks, like, because we're operating from a subjective point of view
Mhm.
always. So there is no, if you come from it in that way, there is no objectivity, period. You know, and many people in the traditions of Buddhism would say that Buddhism is about radical subjectivity. It's about only subjectivity. There's only me having a projection of the world, and I experience my world, you experienced your world. And though ultimately we're the same, we're equal, and we are the same, we have the same source, as individuals, we have subjectivity. So
Yeah.
there is no ultimate answer within the personality then. It just has an experience. And it can never know beyond that experience, that of the personality of the body mind. So the body mind is very, very limited in that regard. And so once we start going outside of that point of view, then we start to understand that, like, well, it could be this way or it could be that way. Suddenly all of these options open up, and you're no longer acting out of conventional thinking, because the personality is pretty much all conventional thinking. It's all programming. It's all comes through the culture and through our parents and everything we're learned. It's all learned, right?
Mhm.
So um, and it's very limited in many ways. So for this person, for Douglas, the person to try to understand the answers to these questions is
Yeah.
kind of an impossibility.
Sorry, I was putting hopes. It's just
However,
that
however,
YouTube doesn't cut it, you know.
yeah, but however,
Mm.
you can if we can go beyond the body mind, then it's it opens things up, and then you start to understand that there are no conventional answers that are going to help you in any way, because it's all limitation, because the as you're identified with one tiny little speck of dust in the whole entire universe or cosmos or unified whole, then if you can see that experientially, then it changes everything, and you stop. Well, for me personally, I stopped asking these questions. Sometimes I let the personality ask the questions because it wants to do that, but I don't take it seriously because it's like, oh, it's just the mind, like it's
Yeah.
just thoughts.
Yeah.
And there's no nothing that's so limited, and so there's nothing really to that. There's nothing for me there, to act within those limitations. I've all but given up on that that limited way of being. It's much more interesting to me to go beyond that and just to explore what is beyond that, you know, which is huge. It's limitless. It has no limitations. So
Yeah, it's huge. And I assume that because it's so huge, like going in little steps. This is my perspective, like little steps of observing the reality as it comes to you, or new realities as they come to you, to try to understand those first, and then the next one, and then the next one is what makes sense. But maybe ultimately it doesn't. Of course, each one does what they think is best. Could you just develop a bit more the what do you call crazy what?
crazy wisdom.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can.
Okay.
Crazy wisdom is a concept that Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche talked about. And he was arguably one of the greatest examples of crazy wisdom. And so what I mean by that is, he threw outrageous parties and did all kinds of things that gurus aren't supposed to do or expected to do.
Mm.
He painted outside the lines of culture quite a lot. And he was an artist, and he did just crazy stuff. And I think a lot of it was to get people interested in the Dharma. So, because in this late 60s, early 70s to up until the 80s, he was attracting a lot of students and a lot of artists.
Did people see him as an enlightened being?
Absolutely, absolutely. And he came from Tibet. He escaped and went to Oxford and studied at Oxford. And then he went to the US and started a center in Vermont, and eventually started Naropa University in Boulder, Colorado. So a whole university of Buddhism related studies. And Allen Ginsberg was one of his students. And so he just had a lot of people following him and learning from him, and then eventually teaching what he taught. And
Okay.
so my teachers were his students. Some of his students were my teachers. So anyway, he drank a lot apparently, and he just did he threw crazy parties. And there's a book written by his wife or partner, um, talks about all of the things that he did and that were just,
Did
I
he
don't,
say anything? Did people confront him with that, like they did with the other one that
people
smoked?
confronted him, uh, yeah, about a lot of things. I don't really know. I don't have all the stories.
Mm.
I have a few stories, but from what I understand, he didn't want to play by societal rules at all. He was interested in teaching Dharma and exploring the phenomenal world in his own unique way.
which makes total sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, like considering what you were saying before. So was his body wanting that? Because he wasn't, right? Was his body desiring? Just we're supposing
I
here
would I
only,
would
right?
ass- I would assume that yeah,
Mm.
he let his body mind do what it wanted to do. And um although I don't really know. Listening to his teachings and reading all of his, he has a huge collection of teachings. It's like an encyclopedia. They're profound. I mean, you can't deny it. It's pure wisdom. It's straight from the top. Rarely do you hear that level of teaching of Dharma
So maybe the whole idea of enlightenment is probably just not, we cannot grasp it, you know?
because it's an
We
idea.
cannot grasp it. And people
Exactly.
act in different ways. And maybe another person would look at what he does and say, oh, that's immaturity. He cannot be enlightened. While others say, oh, but there was a lot of wisdom there.
Yeah.
So there is no pattern. There is no limits to
There's no
what you can.
committee. There's no committee
Yeah, exactly.
saying that he is or he isn't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because in reality, I mean, this body still exists. You're still responsible for it.
Yeah.
And you can kill yourself and then, get rid of that responsibility.
No.
But
No,
no,
I don't think so.
no, okay. Tell me more about it.
I don't
Like
think you can get rid
if
of
you were
that.
enlightened and your body was just wanting to do things, and
Oh, I
basically
see.
you
If you
think
were
all that
enlightened.
is boring, and
Yeah.
because you're in, like there's such a bigger picture for me now. Not for me, there's such a bigger picture but the body's still there, and the body's still wanting things. You cannot just kill yourself and stop with it. Or
I
why
don't
would you want to
I
stay?
don't think
Because
yeah.
it would have to be you wanting to stay, because you can decide if you kill that body or not,
I don't think
from a possibly
killing. Yeah, I
enlightened
mean,
person
it's a
perspective.
possibility. I
Mm.
really don't know the
Mm.
answer to that. However, what I would say is that killing oneself is
It's not the self, it's the body.
yeah, that's the body.
Mm.
Killing the body. I don't really know, but
Mm.
it seems like it's an act of violence that I don't think would come into play. I just don't think that because there's really no violence that I can tell from an enlightened being.
Killing a body doesn't have necessarily to be an act of violence. It is shown everywhere in the world. People
It's a
deciding to
possibility.
kill their body, deciding to kill themselves because for many reasons, and they do it in a very peaceful, conscious,
I don't think you would have to kill the body if
yeah.
I think you could just leave.
Okay. But
Yeah.
then you don't. They don't. They continue being people here.
Sometimes, or sometimes they get cancer
I've
and
got the feeling that they still like to do that. They still want to. They are experimenting through the body, and they think, why waste this experience? It makes sense to me. Why waste this body, and why waste everything that this body can feel and experience? Why waste this knowledge? Okay, because you already got all the knowledge that you need to have. But who's to say that? Maybe
so
there's more. Maybe there's levels, and maybe the levels of enlightenment go even further.
I think
We don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, it's a good point. I think that mostly the impetus for sticking around is to teach. So, from
Mm.
what I understand, a lot of the stories from teachers are they stuck around because they wanted to be bodhisattvas. They wanted to teach as many people as possible what they knew and what they discovered. Because when you get even on the not full enlightenment but so-called lower levels of awakening, there's a desire to share this knowledge because it is so profound. And
I could pick that one already now, you know. There's a desire to.
sorry,
There is a desire. We could even, do you see what I mean? Like we could dive into this because you're saying that there is a desire,
yeah,
which makes sense that there is a
absolutely, there
desire, It
absolutely.
makes sense. Like, you know a lot. Why
Yeah.
wouldn't you want to share with,
Yeah. I don't see an
everyone?
issue with that.
But it's a desire. So does it come from the body or from the self?
No, no. It doesn't I don't
Mm.
believe it comes from the body. It's a very pure desire um to expand,
Okay.
because you're already
Yeah.
you're once you start to lose the limitations of the body mind and you discover that you're actually free or much more free than you thought you were, then it's just only natural to want to share that. As you're expanding, you want other people to have that because they're not separate from you. Ultimately, they're not. So it's like, well, why love another person? Because you have this connection. You see love is the connection between so-called individuals, right? Or love is the connection to all beings, you know? So it's an interconnectedness that you are exploring or experiencing, and therefore you want everyone to have this freedom that you have. It's automatic. So it's not like the personality suddenly decides, oh, I need to teach people, like,
Mm-hmm.
because this is really interesting. It's not like that.
Maybe
It's
we
like,
can see the
it's
universe
automatic.
expanding, wants to grow more,
Yeah.
and wants to, like you said, expand, and wants to, and for that is aware that having humans communicating with other humans is a good way to do it.
Yeah. Perhaps. Yeah. Perhaps.
Maybe I'm being a bit annoying, okay, but my thing is that there's still this wanting to, which I have nothing against that,
What do you
I'm
mean?
just, there's still the wanting, there's still the desire to achieve something, go
So
somewhere.
no, no, not at
No,
all. No,
grow,
no.
develop,
That's a human
evolution.
perspective.
Okay.
That's a perspective from the personality. So there's a difference. What I'm talking about is more like lila,
Hmm.
which is enlightened desire. It's desire to play. It's desire
Yeah.
to expand and play, but it's not. There's no ignorance there. So there's nothing clouded by. There's no ignorant desire there, and so there's a distinction between desire that comes from separation consciousness.
Which is selfish, probably.
Well, whether or not it's
Mm.
selfish, yeah, it's me oriented.
Yeah.
It's wanting to serve
Mm-hmm.
me because I think I'm separate. I'm not whole.
Mm-hmm.
But once I become whole, then everything changes, and there's no more desire in that same way. There's a desire to explore and because you're free, you
Yeah.
know? So what do you do when you're free?
Yeah, I would explore for sure.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. And
So
this
then
and
it
this is
becomes lila. So
okay.
it's completely different. It's not the same thing at all.
Okay. But
It's
it's
just
a
like it's
certain
just the same
level
thing
of
as
desire.
you
It's a
could say
different
that.
one.
You could
Okay.
say that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you could. But I don't even like to use the
Okay.
word desire. I mean,
Okay.
it's more just like it's just like an impetus to expand or yeah. I don't really have a good word for it. Desire, this it's a loaded word too. Like
Okay.
it's a very kind of beaten down word. It's a lot. There are a lot of words like that, or I just don't like.
Yeah.
Maybe I use them, but I don't really have a better word, so I don't know.
No, that's fine.